I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, Senate Democrats are moving forward with President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package, but they still face several hurdles. Fellow Democratic lawmakers say the plan needs more safeguards to protect out-of-work Americans, while Republicans oppose more stimulus spending, slamming the bill's price tag. GOP Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming and Democratic Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin of Michigan share their thoughts on the package and what they say the nation needs to recover from the economic crisis. Texas Governor Gregg Abbott sparking a mix of reactions, announcing plans to end the statewide mask mandate and to allow businesses to return to 100% capacity. Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace weighs in on the Lone Star State rolling back COVID-19 restrictions and the sexual harassment allegations against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Plus commentary from Brian Kilmeade, host of The Brian Kilmeade Show. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcast.com.
I'm Jerry Willis.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Shannon Bream, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, March 5th, 2021. I'm Lisa Brady. The centerpiece of the president's pandemic response is nearing the finish line, despite complaints about a partisan process.
After the elections, you have a 50-50 Senate, and you have a House with very narrow margins. That should be a mandate to move to the middle.
I'm Chris Foster. Senate Republicans aren't making it easy, but Democrats are on track to pass their big coronavirus financial relief and stimulus bill.
If they don't pass this, it seems to me, I don't want to overstate, but it almost feels like the Biden presidency would be over and that the Democrats' control of Congress would be over. I just don't know how you'd come back from something like that.
We speak with Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace.
And I'm Brian Kilmeade. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
COVID relief hits the Senate floor.
The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the motion to proceed is agreed to.
Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote to begin debate on the $1.9 trillion package President Biden calls the American Rescue Plan, though debate quickly hit a procedural speed bump.
Title IX, Committee on Finance, Subtitle A, Crisis Support for Unemployed Workers.
Clerks reading the 628-page bill on the Senate floor after Wisconsin Republican Ron Johnson objected to the routine request to waive the reading. Democrats say delays won't stop it from passing. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
The time is now to move forward with big, bold, strong relief. It is time to tell the American people that help is on the way.
But Republicans say it's more wish list than rescue.
The Bernie Sanders wing of the Democrat Party is running the show up here on Capitol Hill, and this is the first step.
Senate Minority Whip John Thune says Republicans were cut out of the process on the second largest spending bill in U.S. history, behind last year's CARES Act. The president did meet with some Republican lawmakers and is backing a change that makes fewer Americans eligible for stimulus checks based on income. But the White House insists the entire package is needed to help survive the pandemic and speed recovery.
Republicans are united that there is some assistance that's needed, but not what we're looking at here with this Democrat bloated bill, which isn't really about COVID relief.
Wyoming Republican Senator John Barrasso.
It is a wish list of liberal spending. It is packed with pork. It is so much unrelated to coronavirus. And the Democrats seem to be rushing to do this because they realize that with almost 2 million people being vaccinated every day, and with enough people that have had the disease itself having now a future immunity likely, that they're running out of time to get their hands in the federal till and add to the debt to such a tremendous amount of money.
Now, I know that some things had been taken out, the minimum wage increase because of the parliamentarians ruling on that, also a transportation project in San Francisco, another one in northern New York that had been criticized. And there has been a change to lower the income caps, at least a proposed change to lower the income caps on the stimulus checks. Does any of that make it better in your view?
The total spending dollar figure is still much, much too high. I mean, it's almost hard to imagine how much $1.9 trillion is. That's similar to what we did with the CARES Act a full year ago. And the situation is so different in the country now, with many places back open, kids back in school, certainly in Wyoming, although nationally kids are falling behind because of the teachers' unions who continue to boycott efforts to get so many more kids back to school. One of the biggest measures dollar-wise is the payoff to the blue states, the money that goes to New York and California and Illinois, which so much is related to the fact that they kept their economies locked down the longest. They have a special formula in this bill that penalizes states that opened sooner, got people back to work, got kids back to school, and this is basically a payoff of the states that were supportive of President Biden. He kind of winked at them and said, you get me elected, I'm going to make sure you get paid off big time, and that's what he's doing for New York, California, and Illinois.
Where would you want to see money going in this bill? If you could scratch it and, start all over again.
To me, coronavirus relief is getting people back to work, getting kids back to school, and getting the disease behind us. So you want to make sure we can get everyone vaccinated who wants to be vaccinated. You want to make sure there's testing, that there's a good distribution network. You want to make sure that schools are actually opened. And if a school's not ready to open or willing to open, they shouldn't be getting money. This bill has money for education in it. 95% of that money doesn't even start to get spent until 2022, well after we have coronavirus behind us. So I don't think we need to do any of that. That is a payoff to the teachers' unions. They sent Joe Biden a ransom note, and he was happy to pay it. He made all types of big-time promises about getting kids back to school. He deserves an F grade on that because he's completely failed to put kids first.
What about the fact that Democrats are using a budget process that doesn't require Republican support to pass it? How much could that maybe help Republicans in the 2022 midterms?
This is a time when, after the elections, you have a 50-50 Senate and you have a House with very narrow margins. That should be a mandate to move to the middle. And President Biden, in his inaugural address, talked about unity. His entire campaign was about compromise and bringing people together. And right after the inaugural address, he threw that unity message and speech out the window and said, nope, we're going far to the left. He did meet with a number of Republican senators who brought a package together of a smaller but still significant piece of legislation that dealt with the kids back to school, dealt with people back to work, and dealt with just the disease component of it. And he seemed receptive, but his staff did not. They sat with their arms folded and shaking their head no. And that's the position now that President Biden has taken, my way or the highway, in spite of the fact that the voters of America have in this election sent a 50-50 Senate to Washington.
Another question being raised is whether a bill this size is still needed now that millions of Americans are being vaccinated against COVID every day.
I think that, part of the reason we're seeing that light at the end of the tunnel is because people are getting shots in arms. More and more of us are getting vaccinated. And a big portion of this bill is money towards our vaccine infrastructure.
Michigan Democratic Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin.
I know that we are aiming to get to the point where we can have these mass vaccination sites, 25,000 people coming to a stadium over the course of a day to get vaccinated once we get into sort of, younger ages. So we got to pay for that. That's certainly part of it. But I also think there are some bills that have been pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, and that this bill helps cover. Most importantly is money for state and locals, right? I don't think people appreciate that we haven't seen the revenues for some of our cities and some of our counties that we would normally see, that we've seen them spend a ton of money to try to make things kind of COVID friendly. And it's frankly my mayors and my police chiefs and my fire chiefs who are telling me that we've got holes in our budgets, and if we don't have help, there's going to come a point where we have to start doing layoffs and cutting city services. So, is the bill perfect? No. But do I think that it's an important signal and shot in the arm? Yes.
What do you say to people who still aren't sure exactly what's in it, who maybe have heard the Republican complaints that it's too much spending not directly related to COVID, like the arts or museum funding, or that money for states, might be considered a bailout or even a payout to Democratic states supportive of the president.
Yeah, well, on the state and local money, I've heard that complaint, but this is why we put extremely tight constraints on how that money can be spent. Because I don't believe in bailing out states and cities that had pre-existing debt, insolvent pensions, things that pre-existed before COVID. This is for COVID. And if you can't prove that it's directly connected to your COVID costs, then you're not going to be able to use the money in the same way. So I feel like that complaint of it, a blue state bailout, it's a nice slogan, but I don't think it's accurate.
Are you concerned at all about the process that essentially going it alone, passing it without Republican support, could backfire on Democrats in the midterms?
I didn't like the process. I'll be honest. I had called early on for us to negotiate this COVID package the same way we did the previous four, which was really hard fought negotiation between Democrats, Republicans, House and Senate, and the White House. And obviously, the control of the Senate flipped in the meantime and the control of the White House. But I still believed that was the best way to do COVID relief. You don't win every battle when you're just one member of Congress. But I will say, I still think if you ask the average person, they are interested in some form of additional COVID assistance, whether it's for them or for small businesses. I'm not sure that 2 years from now, someone's going to be saying, well, you shouldn't have passed a COVID bill when you did. We got a lot of time between now and then, and we have to deliver.
There is a proposal to keep some National Guard troops in D.C. for another 2 months. And you put out a statement critical of that, at least until there's more information about why. Correct? Why did you put that statement out?
Well, listen, I have a view of this because the Michigan National Guard is in charge right now of security around the Capitol. We are leading all of the National Guard troops who are here. And they flagged for me that, on March 12th, their mandate ends and they hadn't heard what was going to happen afterwards. I will tell you, no one likes seeing sort of the fortress-like atmosphere around the U.S. Capitol. No one likes seeing really tall fences, with razor wire on top and uniforms protecting the Capitol. It's a symbolic place. So we don't like that. So I want to understand the threats. And then, that drove the decision to ask for a 60-day extension. I think we, as members of Congress who work here, we should have the right to get a security briefing. But then also, I want to know what the plan is to off-ramp the National Guard and have us go back to a place where the Capitol Police are able to protect us. And that off-ramp plan is something that I would expect to see before we move ahead on approving another 2 months.
What have you taken away from the multiple hearings that have been held now on the January attack? Because there certainly has been some conflicting testimony about who knew how much ahead of time and then the response during the riot.
Yeah, this is why I really believe we need a truly bipartisan commission to take a stand back look at this and not just do this through various hearings and committee meetings, because what is clear to me is that the threat was not taken seriously. I'm from Michigan, so we've been dealing with these kinds of problems for over a year. I knew there was going to be violence that day. I told my staff in writing the day before, no one is to come into the office because I knew there'd be violence. I just thought it would be outside on the lawn. I didn't think they'd ever get in. So they clearly underestimated the threat. They clearly did not request enough forces ahead of time from the National Guard. And clearly there was no quick reaction force waiting nearby, which seems to me to be a pretty egregious mistake.
Representative Slotkin is also a former Defense Department official and CIA analyst, and her concern about Capitol security issues and how they're being handled is something that crosses the political aisle.
The security, I believe, right now is excessive around the Capitol. We do have members of the Wyoming National Guard who are here. I've met with them, took them on a tour of the Rotunda and the Capitol building. It's time for them to go home. It's time for the Guard to go home. It is time to get our country back to to the way it was previously. These razor wires and fences and need to come down, and we need to allow a better interaction with government and the people that we elect to serve the folks of this country.
Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, thank you very much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
This is Brian Kilmeade with your Fox News commentary. Coming up.
A year ago, there were no coronavirus restrictions in the United States, but they were coming soon, though. And now some governors have been saying that with case numbers going down and vaccination numbers going up, enough's enough. Some restrictions in Michigan are eased starting today. Mask mandates and other restrictions were lifted in Mississippi Wednesday. They're ending in Texas next Wednesday. President Biden says about easing up now with the vaccination process speeding up.
The last thing we need is Neanderthal thinking.
Texas Governor Gregg Abbott tells Fox,
"Where we are today is completely different from where we were this time last year when Texans and Americans didn't know how to deal with this. For an entire year, Texans have learned the best practice, and that is to wear a mask, and we still strongly recommend that people do wear a mask."
The 7-day average of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are trending down nationwide.
We seem to be making progress. There's no question we're making progress from the height of the disease in January. Having said that, we still get 50, 60,000 new cases a day, 2,000 new deaths a day.
We speak with Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace.
Texas does not have a particularly sterling record. Cases are up in Texas, and they're 48th in states in vaccinations. So why is this a point? You know, it's one thing if you're going to relax a little bit, but you're going to end the mask mandate next week, and you're going to say every place can go to 100% capacity. Restaurants, stores, theaters, gyms. I'm not sure I understand that.
Some individual businesses and business chains are going to say, nope, you need a mask to come in here. But now you're putting, retail workers and food service workers in the position of being the mask cop.
Yes, that's exactly right. In addition to which, I mean, it sends a message. A lot of people don't follow this as closely, I guess, as you and I do, because they actually have real lives and real jobs, and this is what we do for a living. But, if there's a message, the governor thinks it's safe to go to 100% capacity in a restaurant, some restaurants are going to open 100%, and some people are going to think it's safe to go. And it clearly sends a message. And it's okay to let your foot off the brakes. And when you hear that, and then you hear Dr. Walensky, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, say this isn't the time to do it. We're not there yet. I'm just concerned that what have we seen over and over again in this thing? We opened too quickly in April and May of last year, and then we had that huge spike in July. We opened again too quickly towards the end of 2020, and we had a huge spike in January. We're doing so well right now. The cases are coming down. We could do a lot better, but where cases are coming down, more and more people are being vaccinated. I guess my feeling is I would prefer that we kept more boundaries on a little while longer, and maybe we can really get in a good situation, to that herd immunity that we keep all hoping for.
On the economic side, it's looking like this coronavirus financial relief package is going to get passed by the Senate at some point with some tinkering away from the House version. Now, Senate Minority Leader McConnell says it's too late for a bill this big, to your point that we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. With vaccines here, the economy is going to come back on its own, Republicans say. And it's a very, very big bill, but there are still a lot of people and businesses who are going to need help for a while.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can argue the merits of it, and that's certainly a legitimate thing to do. You can't argue the politics of it. Joe Biden and the Democratic majority have staked their entire credibility on this bill. I cannot imagine that this bill, in some form of it, maybe as you say, it gets tinkered now. Once you make more than $80,000, you don't get any money. It strikes me as perfectly reasonable. A family making $160,000, you don't get any money. My guess is it could be even a little lower than that. But they've got to pass a bill. If they don't, I just think, if they can't do it on an issue where they don't need 60 votes because of budget reconciliation, they can pass it with 51. If they don't pass this, it seems to me, I mean, I don't want to overstate, but it almost feels like the Biden presidency would be over and that the Democrats' control of Congress would be over. I just don't know how you'd come back from something like that.
Well, after this does get passed, presumably, we may see a pretty harsh stall in legislation that Democrats want to get done. This voting rights bill and the police reform bill that just passed, they don't appear to have the 60 votes in the Senate. And even if Democratic leadership, says enough, let's kill the filibuster, they don't have the votes to do that.
No, I agree. I think they'll be able to pass one more economic bill. This is the rescue plan, the COVID relief plan. They're also talking about a recovery plan, the sort of Build Back Better plan, which they can also pass under budget reconciliation. And my guess is they get that through. But a lot of this legislation, I agree with you, has no chance in the Senate because they can't pass the filibuster and they can't kill the filibuster. The one area, I don't know, there's some areas that I think they might be able to. I think the minimum wage, conceivably, they could pass something. It wouldn't be $15 an hour. It might be $10 or $11 an hour. I have to say that I was kind of shocked when I saw that I didn't know. The minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, and it hasn't been increased since 2009. Seems to me there's something. Maybe it's not $15, maybe it's $12, maybe it's $11, and maybe it doesn't happen all at once and you phase it in over 3 or 4 years. But it seems to me that should be some bipartisan support for something. $7.25 that's 12 years old feels awfully out of date.
Yeah, and I'm not an economist and I'm not a mathematician and I'm not a labor expert, but I read something basically saying, look, if you extrapolated past minimum wages to boom times and compared it to current GDP, and et cetera, it really should be more like $23 an hour.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the right number is. And again, it may be less a matter of the merits of it and more a matter of the politics of it. But somewhere between $7.25 an hour and $15 an hour, I think there's probably a sweet spot that you could get 10 Republicans to go along with 50 Democrats and pass a bill.
Yeah. A lot of reporters, Chris, did not like or believe everything that Donald Trump said. But as we've talked about, he was quite accessible compared especially to President Biden. Now, is this just different styles of governing, or would you like to see the president take more questions and be out there more other than just making the planned statements that he makes?
Is that a true question? I mean, have you ever said, no, I don't want to? Well, though, there were moments during the Trump presidency when I could have done with a little less of them. But, yeah, absolutely. He needs to be out more. He needs to do more interviews. I don't think he's had a real formal press conference yet, and we're, more than a month into his presidency. There's been this interesting thing that it seems like the Biden handlers are a little bit afraid of him and a little bit afraid of what he might do. To a certain degree, I could see him waiting till they get this COVID relief package passed. They hope to get it passed by the 14th, which I guess is a week from Sunday. And, I think that shortly thereafter, you're going to see a speech to a joint session of Congress. And, it seems to me that might be an appropriate point to hold a news conference and start, being more accessible to more reporters. Having said that, I learned something during my years covering the Reagan administration. You don't tell us how to cover our stories. We don't tell you how to cover the government, how to run your government. Last time I checked, the Biden White House was not asking either you or me for advice on how they should handle its communication strategy.
Well, Chris, we're in another round of this cancel culture debate. It's maybe, I don't know if it's another round, maybe it just never ends. I mean, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head were in the news for a minute with Hasbro dropping that branding, and now it's Dr. Seuss. Do you find this stuff tiresome or interesting to see how things change and why they change?
Yes is the answer. I mean, I find it tiresome in some cases and foolish. Mr. Potato Head, really? On the other hand, there are times when there is an outrage industry. There's an industry that makes money and certainly makes waves by creating outrages and controversies and forcing people to go into their corners. I think in some cases, it's a case of people being enlightened. In other cases, it seems to me it's a case of taking political correctness too far. I don't know that I can define the line, but as Potter Stewart said about obscenity in the Supreme Court, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
All right, let me get one more from you. Also getting a lot of coverage on Fox lately, besides Dr. Seuss, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over the course of a year, has gone from getting raves for these daily coronavirus updates to more people remembering, oh yeah, I forgot, we actually don't like Andrew Cuomo after all.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the highs and the lows in just a year. The problem he's got now is, I mean, he's got a lot of problems. First of all, there's the substantive problem of what he did in ordering the nursing homes accept people who had COVID for an understandable reason, which was to relieve the overload in hospitals. But, it turned out to be a disastrous policy. Then there's the question of, did they come clean with the numbers? They clearly didn't. That's now under federal investigation. And now these allegations about the women. The problem is that basically he's a fairly unlikable guy, pretty unlikable guy, and a bully. And people seem to have forgotten that during his period when he was giving, I thought, very effective briefings. But now people are remembering that, and he doesn't have a lot of fans. He's been a bully to reporters. He's been a bully to his fellow Democrats. I mean, you can just see the delight in Mayor Bill de Blasio's eyes as he takes the knife and sticks it in and twists it a few times, almost every day on Cuomo. You tick off that many people over that many years, and he's into his third term as governor of New York. When you hit the skids and you start heading down, there aren't a lot of safety nets out there for you.
All right, Chris, I feel like we've gotten a lot done, so I'll let you go. Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace on the Fox News Rundown. Thanks, Chris.
You bet. Thanks, Chris. My pleasure.
Fox News Radio on demand on the Fox News app. Download the app and just click listen. When you swipe left, you can listen to your favorite Fox News talk shows live. Swipe right for the latest Fox News Radio newscasts on demand. Fox News Radio on the Fox News app. Download it today. Rate and review the Fox News Rundown on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
One New York City artist has been giving survivors of COVID-19 victims something that the pandemic has taken away from so many, a place to mourn their loss. Christina Libby started the Floral Heart Project, and she creates beautiful heart-shaped wreaths out of flowers and then displays them in public places. She told the Associated Press that when she began the project early in the pandemic, she was thinking of the people who had to give their goodbyes to friends and family members dying of COVID-19 through a phone or FaceTime, not by their bedside. She was saddened that they had no public memorials, so she decided to do something about it. The floral memorials have become spaces not just for those grieving a family member's loss, but for those who want to have a moment of silence in remembrance of others or of their own losses. She says she wants the idea to grow, eventually having wreaths in all 50 states. Libby's website has a sign-up page for those who would like to bring a floral heart to their own city. To learn more about it and to see the beautiful arrangements, go to floralheartproject.com. In New York City, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary. Brian Kilmeade. What's on your mind?
I'm going to talk about what just happened last week at CPAC and amongst Republicans to let you know what is next in 2024. Should Donald Trump getting some legal problems and not be able to run or not be healthy enough to run, here's what I can expect. Vice President Pence to put his hat in the ring. Senator Tim Scott look out. Mike Pompeo, Governor Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Nikki Haley, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Senator Josh Hawley. One thing I will say, that is a quality field that the Democrats cannot match because it's almost certainly Joe Biden will not have an opportunity to run another 4 years. I don't know if he's going to get through another 4 months. Out of this entire class, if I was to say and bet on someone today, nobody would be ahead of Governor Ron DeSantis on pure performance alone. With a rich Ivy League background, with a military experience, with a knowledge of Washington only coming from Congress, and now running one of the most important states on the red side and maybe in the country, fastest growing as well, and most respected, Florida, Ron DeSantis has a leg up. I'm perfectly aware that it's very short term. I know that it all comes down to him winning re-election as well. Nikki Haley, I thought was a front runner until she took on the former president a few weeks ago, has been able to speak to him since. But if I was to say a dark horse, someone coming up the side that should not be discounted, it's Scott's. Rick Scott, Tim Scott. Both are extremely accomplished, both extremely dedicated, both extremely smart and experienced. It's going to be exciting, and it's never too early to speculate on the horse race. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network, subscribe and listen to the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Former federal prosecutor and 4-term U.S. Congressman from South Carolina brings you a one-of-a-kind podcast. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.